Modern-day Iran, nearly 2,500 years ago. Persepolis, Persia, the spring equinox, 450 BC. 23 nations are ascending a grand staircase carved into a massive stone platform. Armenians carrying silver vessels with griffin handles, Babylonians with textiles, Indians with jars of perfume, Ethiopians leading a rare long-necked African beast, each delegation bringing tribute to the King of Kings. This annual procession continues for 2 centuries. Then, in 330 BC, during a wild feast, an Athenian companion named Thaïs stands and makes a speech. She picks up a torch, and in one night, 200 years of construction becomes ash. But here's the irony. The Persians never called this city Persepolis. That's a Greek name, city of the Persians, given by the people who destroyed it. The Persians called it Parsa. We remember it by the language of its conquerors. I'm Arthur, and we're stepping in to the ceremonial heart of Persia, just hours before its spectacular downfall. This is the city that took a century to build and burned in a single night. 522 BC. A Persian nobleman named Darius seizes the Achaemenid throne through force and political maneuvering. Darius already controls the largest empire on earth, stretching from the Indus River to the Mediterranean Sea, from the steppes of Central Asia to the deserts of Egypt. 50 million people, 23 provinces called satrapies. He already has 3 capitals, Susa for winter, Apadana for summer, and Babylon for administration. But Darius wants something different. Not another administrative center, something ceremonial, a stage where the entire empire can gather once per year to affirm unity. In 518 BC, Darius's grand vision begins to rise from the dust. Darius chooses a location in the Marv-dashed plain in modern-day Fars province at the foot of Kuhi-Rahmat, the Mountain of Mercy. His engineers designed something unprecedented, a massive artificial platform covering 13 hectares with its stone retaining walls raised up to 18 meters above the plain. The platform is constructed from dark gray limestone quarried from nearby mountains, filled with mud brick and faced with precisely cut stone blocks. It's not a fortress, the walls are too low for defense. It's a stage elevated above the world. The workforce is international and documented. In the 1930s, archaeologists from the University of Chicago's Oriental Institute excavated Persepolis and discovered tens of thousands of clay tablets written in Elamite script. These weren't royal proclamations or religious texts, they were payroll records. The tablets list workers by name, occupation, and payment. Stonemasons from Persia, decorators from Media and Egypt, brick molders from Babylon, sculptors from Ionia, women workers alongside men, payments in wine, sheep, and grain, even administrative records of special postpartum rations, providing extra grain and wine to support new mothers. This wasn't built by slaves. It was built by free workers, compensated and respected across ethnic lines. The receipts prove it. Cedar wood arrives from Lebanon, gold from Lydia and Bactria, lapis lazuli from Sogdiana, turquoise from Chorasmia. The entire empire contributes materials and expertise. Darius commissions gold and silver foundation tablets to be buried beneath the Apadana, the great audience hall. The inscription, written in Old Persian, declares, "I am Darius, King of kings, King of countries, King of this earth." It lists a vast empire stretching across the known world, from the borders of India to the edges of Europe. Darius dies in 486 BC, never seeing Parsa complete. But his son Xerxes inherits the vision and the resources to finish it, and he will make it the center of the greatest ceremonial display the ancient world has ever witnessed.
Xerxes I continues his father's work with even greater ambition. Over the course of his 30-year reign, he completes the structures that will define Persepolis forever. You approach Parsa from the west, crossing the plain toward the imposing platform. A double-ramped staircase, wide enough for horses and chariots, leads up to the Gate of All Nations. Is Xerxes' entrance statement. A square hall, roughly 25 meters per side, supported by 4 massive columns. Guarding the eastern entrance stand 2 lamassu, colossal stone bulls with human heads and wings, each carved from a single block. Their eyes seem to follow you as you pass. An inscription in 3 languages, Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, declares, "King Xerxes says, 'By the grace of Ahura Mazda, I built this gateway of all nations. Much else that is beautiful was built in this Parsa, which I built and which my father built. Whatever seems beautiful, all that we built by the grace of Ahura Mazda.'" Beyond the gate, you turn south toward the Apadana, the audience hall. This is the heart of Persepolis. The Apadana covers 12,000 square meters. That's the size of almost 2 professional soccer fields. 72 columns, each 24 meters tall, equivalent to an 8-story building, support the roof. The central hall contains 36 columns arranged in a 6x6 grid. 3 porticos, north, east, and west, each have 12 columns. The column capitals are masterpieces, double-headed bulls, lions, and eagles. Each capital weighs several tons and sits atop fluted stone shafts. Today, 14 columns still stand. Imagine 72. The ceiling is cedar wood imported from Lebanon, painted and gilded. When sunlight streams through the high windows, the interior glows gold and red. 10,000 people can gather here comfortably. East of the Apadana rises the throne hall, also called the Hall of 100 Columns. Started by Xerxes and completed by Artaxerxes I, it's even larger than the Apadana, a massive square spanning almost an entire modern city block, but lower. This is where military receptions occur, where generals and governors report. 8 massive stone doorways feature reliefs of the king battling mythical beasts. 2 colossal stone bulls flank the northern portico. South of the Apadana sits the Palace of Darius, designed to capture the winter sun. Higher still, carved directly into the mountain, stands the Palace of Xerxes. From here, the king can survey the entire platform and the plain beyond. And then there's the treasury, a vast complex of storage rooms where tribute from 23 satrapies is kept: gold, silver, precious stones, fine textiles, and exotic animals. Water reaches the platform through an ingenious qanat system, underground channels bringing water from the mountains, a Persian invention that will spread across the Middle East and endure for millennia. But Persepolis isn't designed for daily governance. It's designed for one annual event that defines the empire. And every spring, when the equinox arrives, the world comes to Parsa.
Nowruz, New Day. The Persian New Year. For over 3,000 years, still celebrated today by 300 million people, Nowruz marks the spring equinox, when day and night are equal, when winter yields to rebirth, when darkness surrenders to light. For Zoroastrians, Nowruz has cosmic significance. Ahura Mazda, the supreme deity embodying light, truth, and wisdom, triumphs over chaos. Fire, sacred in Zoroastrianism, symbolizes purity and divine presence. Nowruz celebrates this eternal victory of light over darkness, of order over chaos. At Persepolis, Nowruz is more than a religious festival. It's the empire's annual affirmation, and it's frozen forever in stone. Carved into the northern and eastern staircases of the Apadana are reliefs depicting this exact moment. But instead of just looking at the ruins, picture this. It's March 20th, 450 BC. You're part of the Armenian delegation. You've traveled for weeks, carrying the finest silver vessels with griffin handles your craftsmen could produce. You ascend the grand staircase as the sun rises over the mountain of mercy. The smell of roasting meat and burning incense fills the air. Musicians play flutes and lyres. Ahead of you, Babylonians climb in distinctive robes. Behind you, Ethiopians lead a rare long-necked African creature, perhaps an okapi or a young giraffe. You are surrounded by 23 different nations, all wearing distinct clothing, ascending together toward the King of Kings. You pass through the Gate of All Nations and enter the Apadana. 10,000 people fill the hall. 72 massive columns soar overhead. At the far end, King Artaxerxes I sits enthroned. You approach, kneel, and present your silver vessels. He nods, and an attendant hands you a gift in return, a golden bracelet and a bolt of fine linen. Because this isn't simple taxation, it's reciprocity. The reliefs carved outside commemorate mutual obligation, not domination. Later, the legendary banquets begin. 15,000 people are fed daily. The royal tables groan under the weight of sweet and sour stews spiced with Ethiopian cumin, saffron-colored rice, and exotic dishes painted with edible gold leaf. The Greek historian Xenophon marveled that Persian cooks were always inventing new dishes. But the feast isn't just for nobles. The payroll tablets record that even the common workers who built this magnificent city receive extra rations of wine, grain, and meat. Everyone eats well. Around you, Babylonians, Indians, Egyptians, Lydians, 23 nations sharing a meal in an empire that feeds its people. For 200 years this happens every spring. 23 nations ascending, the King of Kings receiving, gifts exchanged, feasts shared, the empire renewed. And then, in 332 BC, the greatest conqueror in history crosses the Hellespont, and everything changes.
In 334 BC, a 22-year-old Alexander of Macedon crosses into Persian territory. In just 4 short years, he shatters the greatest empire on earth. Through a series of brilliant, relentless tactics at Granicus, Issus, and finally Gaugamela, Alexander crushes the Persian lines. King Darius III flees, and the Achaemenid Empire collapses. Alexander takes Babylon without resistance, then Susa. Then, in January 330 BC, he arrives at Persepolis. There's no battle. The city surrenders. Tiridates, the treasury keeper, opens the gates and offers Alexander the keys. Perhaps he hopes for mercy. Alexander enters the ceremonial capital of the empire he's just conquered, and he's horrified by what he finds on the road leading in. 800 Greek artisans, severely injured and permanently scarred. The Persians had kept them for their skills, but physically disabled them to prevent escape. Alexander is furious. He sends the artisans home with gifts and pensions, but the discovery hardens something in him. For 3 months, January through April 330 BC, Alexander's army occupies Persepolis. They loot the treasury systematically. 120,000 talents of gold and silver. Plutarch writes that it's the greatest accumulation of wealth ever amassed in one place. It takes 10,000 mules and 5,000 camels just to transport it. The soldiers live in luxury. They occupy the palaces built for Persian kings. They feast in halls designed for Nowruz celebrations. They drink wine meant for royal banquets. And Alexander faces a question: what to do with Persepolis itself? Spare it as a symbol of his own imperial ambitions? He's declared himself the successor to the Achaemenid kings, the new king of kings. Or destroy it as revenge for what Xerxes did to Athens 150 years ago, when Persian armies burned the Acropolis and the temples of the gods. The decision is made during a feast, and the catalyst is a woman. April or May 330 BC. The exact date is lost, but the night is not. Alexander hosts a symposium, a Greek drinking party in the palace of Xerxes. Wine flows, musicians play, dancers perform. The generals celebrate the conquest of the richest city in the known world. Among the guests is Thaïs, an Athenian hetaira, a companion of high status, but rather a highly educated companion. Hetairae were educated, sophisticated women who accompanied powerful men and participated in intellectual and political discourse. Thaïs is the companion of Ptolemy, one of Alexander's most trusted generals and future founder of the Ptolemaic dynasty in Egypt. At some point during the feast, Thaïs stands. The room quiets. She stands before the king and says something like this: "Alexander, your greatest achievement would be this: to join in a procession, set fire to the palace of the Persian kings, and let women's hands destroy in a single moment what Persian power took centuries to build. Let this be revenge for the Greek temples Xerxes destroyed." In 480 BC, Xerxes' armies invaded Greece, burned Athens, and destroyed the temples on the Acropolis. The wounds are still fresh in Greek cultural memory. The room erupts. Soldiers cheer. Alexander, overwhelmed by the moment, flushed with victory, perhaps genuinely moved by the rhetoric, agrees. They form a komos, a victory procession in honor of Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy. Alexander leads. Thaïs follows. Musicians play flutes and pipes. The revelers carry torches, wear garlands, sing and dance through the palace complex. The target is deliberate: the palace of Xerxes, the symbolic heart of Persian imperial power. Thaïs throws the first torch after Alexander. The cedar wood, imported from Lebanon a century and a half earlier, is dry as kindling. The flames catch instantly. Flames leap from beam to beam, room to room. The palace of Xerxes becomes an inferno. The fire spreads. The Apadana ignites. The throne hall burns. The treasury, already looted, collapses in flames. Alexander's army, camped nearby, sees the fire and rushes in, thinking it's an accident. They arrive to find Alexander himself piling wood onto the flames. The soldiers understand. They join the destruction. The fire burns for days. Cedar beams crash down. Stone columns crack from the heat. Gold and silver objects in the treasury melt into puddles. When archaeologists excavate Persepolis in the 1930s, they find a layer of ash 1 to 3 feet deep. Black burn marks scar the bases of columns that survived. The palace of Xerxes is the most damaged structure on the platform. The Tachara, protected by its position, partly survives. Ancient historians are deeply divided. Some claim it was a cold, calculated act of revenge for the burning of Athens. Others say it was spontaneous, a theatrical disaster fueled by wine, rhetoric, and a single courtesan. The truth is probably both. The desire for revenge existed, but the execution was an out-of-control celebration. Later, perhaps weeks, perhaps years, Alexander returns to Persepolis and sees what he's done. According to Plutarch, he regrets it. He realizes he hasn't just destroyed a palace, he's erased a monument to human cooperation, to the idea that an empire could respect the diversity of its subjects, even as it demanded their tribute. Thaïs, for her part, marries Ptolemy after Alexander's death. They have 3 children. Ptolemy becomes pharaoh of Egypt and founds the Library of Alexandria, one of the great repositories of knowledge in the ancient world. The irony is exquisite. The woman who burned Persepolis helped create the institution that would preserve human knowledge for centuries.
After the fire, the ceremonial heart of the empire was gone. Persepolis was swallowed by time, becoming ruins known only to locals. It wasn't until the 1930s that archaeologists finally unearthed its secrets, finally proving its magnificent halls were built by free hands, not in chains. In the 1970s, before the Iranian Revolution, partial reconstruction occurs. 14 columns are re-erected in the Apadana, giving visitors a sense of the original scale. In 1979, UNESCO designates Persepolis a World Heritage Site, recognizing its universal value. The Gate of All Nations survives, the Lamassu still guarding the entrance. The reliefs remain extraordinarily preserved. You can still see the faces of the Armenian delegates, the details of the griffin-handled vessels, the pleats in the Babylonian robes. The colors have faded, but the outlines are perfect. The Tachara, the Palace of Darius, is the best preserved building, its survival a testament to the quality of Persian engineering and its fortunate position away from the worst of the fire. The black burn marks are still visible on stone blocks, scars from the night Thaïs threw her torch. What do these ruins teach us? They prove that the most enduring empires aren't forged through fear or chains, but through reciprocity. Parsa was a monumental stage built by free, respected workers from 23 nations where tribute was exchanged for honor. There is a profound irony buried in the ashes of Persepolis. During that chaotic celebration in 330 BC, a single torch brought the physical heart of the Persian Empire to the ground. But fire can only consume stone and cedar wood. It cannot burn history. While Alexander's empire fragmented almost immediately after his death, the spirit of Persepolis lived on. The festival of Nowruz, the triumph of light over darkness, still unites hundreds of millions of people across the globe every spring equinox, exactly as it did on this massive platform millennia ago. Today, the surviving columns rise from the dust like silent witnesses to a timeless truth. You can destroy a palace in a single night, but an idea built on unity and respect is completely indestructible.
A conqueror's chaotic feast brought the palace of Xerxes to the ground, but it couldn't touch the legacy of the workers who built it. Fire consumes stone and wood, but not history. If you enjoyed this, there are many more lost civilizations to explore. Tell me in the comments, which city should I reconstruct next? See you on the next journey.
I want to take a moment to thank the amazing channel members featured on the screen right now. If you'd like to support the channel, consider hitting the join button below.